I'm the nature chef, Robin G. And I'm also known as the gut whisperer. And right now, I'm preparing some gut-soothing food to soothe the GI tract. You may be wondering why I'm called the gut whisperer. Well, I can tell you. I have had GI problems most of my life. But, you know, they were a typical kind of irritable bowel syndrome. And I had a very severe accident in 2002. I was training a horse that reared up and came over backwards on me and fell between my legs, shattered my pelvis, fractured my sacrum, broke both my hip joints. I had internal injuries and I had crushed arteries. And I was in the hospital for about 3 weeks in Los Angeles. And then I had to recover. My bones recovered very quickly, but later I started developing very severe gastrointestinal problems. I mean, really severe. And I started going to all these doctors, and I then became uninsurable because my insurance was from California, but I'd gone back to Texas for my sister to care for me because I was basically, you know, I was in a wheelchair, then a walker. And so my insurance, when I had to give up my California insurance, I was uninsurable in Texas because my accident was a pre-existing condition. So I had to finally stop going to doctors because I wasn't 65 yet. I was only 48, and I was trying to find some other options because I just could not afford the medical care. But I did manage to go to a lot of different doctors and used credit cards and stayed bankrupt. And traditional medicine just failed me. And then someone gave me a book called Eat to Live by Joel Fuhrman. And I read that book. And that is what started my path. It helped. I got some relief. And I even ended up living with Joel and Lisa Fuhrman and their family. I was helping them develop their business. And that was where Joel realized how ill I was. But let me give you some background, go back even farther. I've been a professional chef for over 35 years. And then I became a private chef and worked for different celebrities. I've cooked for Paul McCartney, Seal, Mikhail Baryshnikov. I was Jeff Lynne's private chef of Electric Light Orchestra. That's where I got to meet Paul. And so I was doing sort of high performance food, but it wasn't nutritarian food, but I was moving in that direction. And then later I tried to become, well, several times I tried to become a vegan, and I never could because I had terrible bloating and terrible GI issues whenever I'd try to become a vegan. So then after the accident, of course, everything went haywire. And Joel realized I was really ill, and he started teaching me how to prepare my food, how to water fast. And he would teach me how to prepare my food so that I could digest it. And I had to water fast quite a bit because my GI tract was so inflamed. Just to bring down the inflammation, I had to water fast. But let's get to the cooking right now. I'll carry on with this in a little bit. But right now I want to tell you what we're doing here. You all should have these recipes. And we're going to do, first of all, the thing we're going to start with are the Normandy style beans with garlic and herbs. So I use a lot of garlic. One of the reasons is we have a lot of chiggers out here where we live in the Ozarks, and garlic does seem to help with the chiggers. And garlic is also antibacterial, and so then I use a lot of herbs, and in here we have oregano. Oh, no, this one doesn't have oregano. This has marjoram, and it has thyme, and it has rosemary. Rosemary is really good for the brain, for brain health, and there have been studies on rosemary and Alzheimer's. And then the marjoram is about as powerful of an antibacterial and antiviral as oregano, which is very powerful. And then I have thyme, which is also going to be an antibacterial, anti-parasite. So I use a lot of herbs. Fresh herbs are really important because they're medicinal and they make the food taste really good. So right here, I've soaked these beans. These beans have been soaked for probably 15 or 16 hours. And these are pinto beans. Now, normally they don't eat pinto beans in Normandy, but I wanted to fix pinto beans because we are going to eat the beans. And so I'm going to just put these together and then put them in the Instant Pot. So I'm going to put you've got the recipe, and let's see what the recipe says. It says 3 teaspoons fresh thyme, 3 teaspoons fresh rosemary, 1 tablespoon dried ground rosemary, and 8 cloves of garlic mash. So I'm going to just guess because I'm using these herbs for some other things. So there you've got that. And now I want to show you a little trick with the, oh, this is my oregano. It just goes in here. The oregano's for something else we're making. But I'll show you a little trick with garlic. It works really well. See this? This is a meat tenderizer. And this is how I do my garlic. Because what you want to do to get all of the medicinal benefits from the garlic, you have to crush it, and you have to let it sit for a little while crushed so that it will release these sulfur compounds. And so I've crushed it. I've been crushing it. And so I use this side to crush it. This works great. I love this. So that's done. So now I'm going to put this in here. And I don't really measure my water. I just cover my beans about 2/3 over the beans, 2/3 of an inch. And I scrape that off as much as I can. Then what I do is use water to, I just love garlic, use the water to rinse that off. So I can get some water. And I cook outside now. I spend most of my day outside because this is a treatment that I'm doing. Okay, so now stir this around a little bit, and you can see what this looks like. No salt or anything, just, and beans. Well, I can't turn it. This is as much as I can turn it. So these are, if you can see that in there, those are the beans with about that much water over the top with all the herbs. That's it. Into the Instapot, which is down here. So I'm going to hit pressure, then I'm going to scroll down into beans. Then I'm going to set my timer for 30 minutes. There we go. Beans are cooking. So we're already getting going here. So the next thing I'm going to do is, this is really delicious. And we have a permaculture garden. It's pretty much permaculture. We do plant some things like the tomatoes. But, and we're planning on next year letting the garden rest for a year. It's a large garden. And our tomatoes just didn't do great this year, and nobody's really did. We had a lot of rain, and then it would get hot and dry, and that's just not good for tomatoes. But these are some squash. These are called Rapancante squash. And everything we grow is organic. This is one that's cut, and it's kind of like between a zucchini and a butternut squash. And it's delicious and it's prolific. It's really easy to grow this squash, and we love it. So we're gonna have it in something tonight here. Okay, so let's get started with a tomato and potato niçoise. And this is just a delicious dish, and these are the last of our tomatoes that we're going to be using for this. So here are our lovely tomatoes. You see the beautiful bright color. Here's some nutmeg that's going to go into this. And I am putting I'm putting mushrooms in it because the mushrooms are so good for you. Here's some oregano, and I've still got some of those herbs there. And here are the mushrooms. These are some porcini mushrooms, and I love the flavor of porcini mushrooms, dried porcini mushrooms. So I soak them in a little wine and water, And they're so good. It smells wonderful. So, I wish you could smell it. But first I'm going to have to slice, well, I need to get my electric skillet out here. So now, we will do this, and you can watch me do this. So I'm going to slice the potatoes. Well, first I'm going to do onions on the bottom. A lot of onions. Okay, so now I'm going to slice. These are from our garden. These are purple potatoes, and you want to slice them thinly because you want to make sure everything gets cooked. So you don't want big thick slices. I mean, this slice is a little thicker. Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Mark is the cameraman. We must thank him. And he's more than the cameraman. Mark set all this up, and he's really good. He used to work on film, with film companies, setting up sets and so forth. So right now, these are beautiful potatoes, beautiful purple potatoes. And so I'm just going to arrange these. They're going around like this. So I'll tell you a little bit more about my experiences with the GI tract. So as I said, this happened back in 2002. So I've pretty much suffered quite a bit with GI issues since 2002. But I will tell you, the nutritarian, whole food, plant-based nutritarian diet was the key. And I learned so much living with Joel and Lisa. They were so kind, they were wonderful. And then I became Joel's dietary assistant. And I saw people get well from all kinds of issues. Things that would have been considered miraculous recoveries, but you all know, a lot of you all know about that now, about diabetes and heart disease and so forth. But I did see a few people that had GI problems, and Joel would ask me to talk to them because, I had the GI problems. And so I would talk about these, try to help them. And one of the things that I learned with Joel is that oftentimes people with a lot of GI problems don't do well with raw foods. Now, that's not everybody, but they don't do that well with raw vegetables. They have some trouble with raw vegetables. And so that was something I would talk to people about, and it does help to eat. For me, I cannot eat raw vegetables. I mean, my issues are really quite severe. I have food sensitivities. I'm unable to eat fruits, although recently I've started being able to eat figs. We do have a fig tree over there. And I've been able to eat some figs, like 2 figs a day, which is amazing. And I've been to 11 gastroenterologists and functional medicine doctors, which are the ones who've helped me the most. Because being sick like I've been, sick with my issues, I've picked up parasites, I picked up bacterial infections, and one of the reasons I think I got the parasites is because one of the things that the doctors did early on is they put me on proton pump inhibitors because I had GERD, acid reflux. I mean, I thought that I did, it felt like it. And so they put me on proton pump inhibitors, which helped a little bit, but not a whole lot. And then they stopped helping. And so then I went on to, so I did that for 12 years. I took proton pump inhibitors, and then I became intolerant to them. I could no longer take them. So over the years, I became more and more intolerant to foods and supplements and medicines and so forth. And doctors just couldn't help me. I mean, I literally had gastroenterologists say, "We can't help you. We can't help you." And at that point, I had moved into a townhouse in Arkansas. I had moved to Arkansas to work with Walmart because I've been teaching since 2005. I've been teaching nutritarian style culinary education. And so I taught for the Walmart executives. interestingly enough, many of them wanted to learn how to do this. So I was teaching there, and I was living in a townhouse, and I started getting really sick. I mean, really, really sick. And I want to say back about the proton pump inhibitors. Taking those for 12 years, what they do is they reduce your stomach acid. And so with your stomach acid is extremely important because it does a lot of things. It starts to break down your food, and then it kills bacteria. It's all kinds of bacteria, viruses. It deals with it when they come into your stomach. Well, being on a proton pump inhibitor for 12 years and parasites, I didn't have enough stomach acid, so I ended up getting sicker and sicker. And then I lived in this townhouse, and I got really sick there. And it just went on, and I literally could not eat anything anymore. And the GI doctor I went to wanted to put a feeding tube in me, a button, and send me to Mayo Clinic because they just couldn't help me anymore. I was in bad shape. And so I had seen another GI doctor. I had lots of scopes, all kinds of scopes. I'd seen another GI doctor, and he had suggested, now I'm putting some Kalamata olives on here. And you all should have all your recipes. I did about half a cup of Kalamata olives, and now we'll put the rest of the tomatoes on here, and then we'll put the herbs and some nutmeg, and this will be ready to go. So you see, once everything's prepped, it's pretty easy to put all this stuff together. But anyway, back to that. So I had another doctor say that that they had been using amitriptyline, an old antidepressant, that to help people with IBS, and he thought I had IBS all the way from my colon to my esophagus, actually to my throat. So anyway, I finally decided I did not want to take an antidepressant. I was very against that, but I was so desperate that I didn't want to go to Mayo Clinic either. And I mean, at that point, I was really financially pretty strapped because I'm 5'8". I think I weighed about 114 pounds. So I was pretty thin, and I looked like a skeleton teaching nutrition at Walmart. And I ended up not working there much longer because I just couldn't do it. And I think I looked too unhealthy for them, which I was. And so I didn't even know how I was going to pay my rent. I was in a bad situation, so I didn't know how I was going to afford to go to Mayo and stay in a hotel. So I went ahead and tried the amitriptyline, and lo and behold, after 3 days, I started being able to eat again. And I had this friend, Mark, who's manning the camera, whose wife had just died. They died a year prior to complications from rheumatoid arthritis. And we were always sad that she did not go completely plant-based. They did go vegetarian, but she was still eating dairy and bread, which are the two worst things for rheumatoid arthritis. But anyway, she died in 2015, and this was now 2016, and my townhouse burned down. There were 4 townhouses, and the person next door smoked cigarettes, and he burned it down in the night. So my townhouse burned down. Okay, so now we've got, I didn't put there's no garlic in this. So I need to put some garlic in this. So I'm going to go ahead, and what I do is I just show you from the beginning. I take this garlic and I just hit it like this, just to break it, get it broken open like that. And then get a few of those garlic cloves out. I just hit them. And what's so nice about being outside, I just throw all this stuff on the ground. So again, I'm going to crush these garlic cloves. They're going to just go on the top of this. It would have been better had they been distributed throughout, but it's just the way it is. How's this doing down here? Okay, so the townhouse burned down, and Mark was kind enough to let me move out here. He's an old stone farmhouse. And I came out here, actually had an RV, a big RV, and I lived in the RV for for, I guess, about a year out here. And I started doing better because the landlord who owned the townhouse that I lived in was a friend of mine. And so the demolition crew that came in and tore down the place, they said they had never seen so much black mold before. It was filled with black mold. So I had been exposed to black mold for about a year that I lived there. So I started doing better when I came out to Mark's, and then I was eating all organic right out of the garden. And so then I started working again, teaching again, and I started going to some functional medicine doctors because, you know, it was just constant. You know, constantly I would have flare-ups, and it would be my esophagus, it would be my lower bowel. It just went on and on. And so let me plug this in. Okay, so now this is ready to go. So we had to stop for a second because of the sun, but anyway, I started getting better, but I started finally to see functional medicine doctors, and I learned a lot of stuff. There's some tests that they do now there's one in particular called the GI map, which is very, very effective. It's a PCR test, it's a stool test, and it can see all kinds of issues that you could be having. Bacterial issues, bacterial imbalance, small intestinal overgrowth, H. pylori, just different types of viral infections, all kinds of stuff. It's a really good test, and it's something that was used in research labs, and it's just recently been made available to clinicians. So I have to do something that I'll tell you about, because we've got mosquitoes. This is called Cedarside. Let's do a commercial real fast. This is Cedarside, and it's cedar essential oils. And it's also, I put lemongrass in there and peppermint because the mosquitoes just hate that. You can spray it on your clothes. It won't stain. It just goes away. Right now it looks like I've got oil stains, but they'll just go away. And so I just spray myself over and over with this, and I don't have a problem with mosquitoes or anything. They hate it. But anyway, it's actually good for you. So anyway, this GI map test is really excellent for letting you know, because one of the things I noticed as I was teaching, I noticed that a lot of people had started having GI issues in young people. Well, you know what they were raised on. I'm now 67, and so I was raised on real, pretty much real food. And then my parents' generation were raised, from gardens and stuff. So they were just starting to do chemical fertilizers in the 50s. And my father was a farmer. He had big farms in Nebraska. And so I'm sure my twin brother and I were exposed to chemical fertilizers just when he would come home, and it would be on his clothes. And they also were using DDT. So that's when all of this chemical stuff started in the 50s, but it didn't really ramp up like glyphosate, which is what's in Roundup. That didn't start until the 90s, and glyphosate has been patented as an antibiotic. It's patented as an antibiotic. And so the reason they've been able to get away with using it on our food is because it doesn't actually hurt our bodies, but what it does do is it damages our microbiome. And as we now know, because of all the science with the microbiome, we now know how important the microbiome is to everything, to our brain health, to our heart health, to our GI health, to our energy production, everything. And so the glyphosate kills our bacteria. And so even when it says GMO free, it does not mean that it doesn't have glyphosate on it, because they actually use glyphosate to dry out things such as wheat, beans, all your legumes, if they're not organic, seeds, sunflower seeds. And so what they do is they want to get as many harvests as they can. And so they grow these things sort of in northern climates. And so normally what they had to do is they would just have to wait until the plants dried before they can harvest them, the seeds, and like the beans and so forth. So what they learned they could do is they could just go out there and spray that glyphosate, just saturate everything in glyphosate. The plant would die and then they could harvest it. So you're not escaping glyphosate if you do GMO free. It really needs to be completely organic. Okay, so now let's go on. I want to show you how I do greens. And it's very important. These are all cruciferous greens. This is a horseradish. These are horseradish greens. And what I usually do is when I go out, we grow them. So I just go out and pull the top part and then leave the bottoms. But I'm going to use this whole one right here. And this is a winter radish green. Didn't get that as clean as I wanted it. This is a winter radish green, and this is another horseradish. This is mustard. And so these are pretty much permaculture. They're just coming back. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to chop them up. I did wash them, but it doesn't look like I washed them well enough. But I'm going to cook it so it won't hurt. It's not like I'm eating it raw. Okay, so, I don't want that oregano in here. So I'm going to start by just cutting it up like this. Because what you want to do is you want to crush it. Because the plant, the cruciferous vegetables, they do not produce the enzyme, the cancer-fighting compounds without being crushed first. So what you want to do is crush them, and they have to be raw. Like if I cook these without crushing them and releasing those enzyme compounds that are the cancer-fighting compounds that are in the cruciferous vegetables, like they're called IQCs, isothionates, they have to make this. And so I'm going to help them make it. And the reason they do is that when an animal is eating them or a pest, they create this compound to protect them from the pest. But that's the compound that protects us. So because I can't eat these raw, so if you can eat them raw, you don't have to go through all this. But because I can't eat them raw, and some people cannot eat raw without getting bloated and having horrible gas problems and sometimes diarrhea, then cooking is what helps, because cooking breaks down the cellulose. The cellulose, the cells have a cellulose coating, and it breaks it down and makes it much easier to digest. And I have garlic in there. I did some crushed garlic in there as well. So what I do is I'm going to massage this. I'm going to break it down, and I'll be able to start smelling the cruciferous, and you'll see it. I break it, it gets much smaller, because what we're making here is we're going to make a 1 skillet meal, which is very easy, very fast. And you can do this with frozen vegetables. I'm just showing you how with all the fresh. And of course, what you want is variety, because it's when you combine all these foods, it's like a symphony. The nutrients are far more powerful when they're combined than just eating one single nutrient, than just sitting there and eating, some broccoli and eating a bunch of broccoli and maybe some beans. If you had eaten broccoli with some carrots or some sweet potato and some squash and combined several things, and then your greens, that really makes a difference. And with me being so limited in what I can eat and only being able to eat cooked foods, I have to be very, very vigilant about making sure I get plenty of nutrients. So I have greens. I eat 2 meals a day. I do intermittent fasting. So I go 16 to 18 hours between my dinner and between my breakfast. And I make sure that I have greens twice a day, and I do this process with them. And sometimes, I'll do it, I'll put them in a container in the refrigerator, so they sit in the refrigerator, and I have, for several days, I have greens that are already prepared like this. And so this makes sure that there's so many, greens, especially cruciferous greens, are loaded with nutrients. They're some of the most they are about the most nutrient dense vegetable there is. So now we've got this pile of greens in here. So now let's just do some broccoli. And cut this up. So one of the things that I do is I'm a certified nutritarian trainer and so health coach. And so I help people transition to whole food plant-based eating, because sometimes it's not easy for people because they have GI issues. Some people can transition beautifully and it completely takes care of their GI issues. If you've ever heard of the medical doctor Zach Bush, he's also an endocrinologist and he's board certified in endocrinology, internal medicine, and palliative care. So he has had a clinic for quite a few years now. So he was putting his patients on this whole food plant-based diet, and he found about 30 of them just did great. I mean, they just completely recovered. And then another 30 did better, but they didn't completely recover. That would be kind of like me. Well, I'm in between the second and third group. And here's some green beans. And I'm going to cut these up in small pieces because they take longer to cook, but they'll cook fast when they're cut in little pieces. That one doesn't look very good. So, so the third group, there's 30, he said it was, I know about 40, but 40% of them just didn't do well at all. Actually, some of them got worse eating whole food plant-based because of all the fiber and the cellulose. They literally couldn't break it down. Their bodies couldn't break it down. So he knew that there had to be some solution, and I knew that when I worked for Joel, we had people that they couldn't do it. They just would have so many gut problems. So he knew there had to be a solution, so he developed a product that helps kind of reverse the damage from glyphosate, because glyphosate does some pretty serious damage. And so, and then with me, I'm so sensitive to things, I cannot even take that product. It's called Ion Biome, and I cannot even take supplements. Most supplements I cannot take. So I did do that GI map test, and I did have H. pylori, which, people get that easily from being on these proton pump inhibitors. I'm not on them anymore, nor am I on amitriptyline anymore. So now we'll do see how I'm doing this whole combination of things? So now we're going to do some yellow squash. This part. And, so let's see, cut this up like this. So you see, this is going to be a full meal here in this skillet. And this right here would feed 2 to 3 people. Because you're going to have it with beans, and then we're going to make a delicious sauce that goes over it. And I've got a sweet potato. Let's do a sweet potato in here. I've got some other things. I've got cauliflower and different things. Oh, I want to put some of that in there. That Replicante squash. So I just cut this, like this. You want to cut this in pieces where everything's going to kind of cook at the same time. Be done at the same time. Oops, so I'm doing this thin enough. Mark, would you get that squash for me, please? That flew off the table. Cut that end off. So now I'll just slice these like this. But you can see how it's not as yellow as butternut squash, and it's not as sweet as butternut squash. This one we let stay on the vine longer, so it will be more like a butternut squash. It'll be sweeter. It's sweeter. It's definitely a winter squash. So, but you see, we've got broccoli. We got 2 cruciferous, green beans, sweet potato, yellow squash. And you know, you make this up and you have it for dinner and have leftovers for tomorrow, the next day. And as you can see, the this cookware that I'm using is a very special cookware. This is called Salad Master. Now, this looks like it's about done. So I've got some garlic on my greens. And now I'm going to put some of these herbs on it, especially on the sweet potato and the squash. And now I'm going to pour a little bit of water in here. And you can do a little white wine if you want. But I'm going to just do a little water in the bottom so it doesn't burn. Oh, I was going to tell you about this cookware. This is called Salad Master. And I got it, well, Mark got it. Kind Mark. Got it because of my sensitivities to everything. And so this is made with titanium stainless steel. So it does not interact with the acids or the alkalinity of food. And so it is very, very, I mean, your food is very pure. It has, because other things like stainless steel does leach. Okay, we've got that going. So now we will make a sauce. So now to make the sauce, I do have a Vitamix, but I know not everybody has a Vitamix. And so the next best thing, other than like a Blendtec or these really expensive high-powered blenders, is the Bullet. The Bullet is pretty strong. I mean, I do a pretty good job with the Bullet. So you've got your recipes, and I'll just go down it with you. And it's on your, this is your Simple Delicious G-Bomb skillet meal. So I didn't put the mushrooms in the skillet down there, the one skillet, the one dish meal, because the mushrooms are in the tomato mixture. So you're still getting all your G-Bombs, except for no berries. So this is called Rancho Robusto sauce. And it's kind of like a ranch dressing, but good for you ranch. So here's lemon juice. And these are about the equivalent to 3 dates. This is date paste. So I'll put those in there. And then here is, these are herbs. This is tarragon and dill and onion powder. And Mark, do you want yours hot?
Yes.
Okay, I will make, this is going to be for Mark, this sauce. I can't eat it because of my sensitivities, but Mark loves everything hot. You want 2 in there or 1?
2.
So we'll put 2. So if you like hot things, throw some hot pepper in there. He will love this. He drinks these sauces.
What kind of peppers are those?
What are they? These are
Serrano.
These are the Serrano.
Red ripe Serrano.
And Mark grows lots of peppers out in the garden. And another time we can show you the garden. And some other, I've got a lot of recipes, wonderful things. Okay, so now.
What were you just putting in?
Oh, excuse me. This was pumpkin seeds, hemp seeds, flax seeds, and 3 dates and 1 1/4 cups of water. And oftentimes I will put, this recipe calls for navy beans, but I think we've got enough beans going on. So you can put the beans in there or you can not put the beans in there. And here's garlic, nice raw garlic. I mean, you can see we went through a lot of garlic here. So now it calls for 1 1/4 cups of water. Might not do as much water because I don't have the beans. And I'll do a few of these herbs in here. Well, I'll wait to put those in. I like to have the herb flex. So what I'll do is I'll blend that real well. Okay, so here's the sauce.
How long did you run it for?
I ran it for about 2 minutes. And so one of the things that I'm going to add to it, I'm just going to pulse these things in. And with me, my sniffer is very sensitive since I can't eat everything. It smells good. So I'm going to put a few drops, let's say 3 drops of lemon essential oil. And this is food grade lemon essential oil. We do food grade. And then I'm going to pulse in these herbs. You know, our mixture of herbs. And put a little oregano in there. And a little black pepper. Now the interesting thing with some people who have gut issues, not black pepper so much, but peppers like the serrano peppers, jalapeno peppers, chipotle, those things can even help to desensitize the gut. But with me, I have very rare issues because I have what they think I probably have nerve damage from the horse accident, which is really triggering a lot of my problems. But because I've had all these issues, I can help other people. Because about every type of issue you can have with your gut, I've got it. And I have managed to be able to transition to eating this way. Now, I'm just going to pulse this. Okay, our sauce is ready, so everything's ready. We're just waiting for the food to be ready. So anyway, because of my issues with the gut, I've learned so much because I really didn't know what it was. I had to try all these different things and go to all these different doctors. And so I've been treated for H. pylori naturally, and fortunately I was able to take the supplements without too much of a reaction. But I've had clients that can't take supplements, can't eat most things. I mean, this is not uncommon. And then of course people with milder versions of it. So I really am able to help people come up with a modified whole food plant-based plan. Sometimes it's hard for people to transition to eating beans, and beans are so good. So I've written a lot of things about the gut because I've learned so much, and so what I help people do is help them formulate a special diet so that they can transition to whole food plant-based eating. As I was telling you about beans, beans are like the biggest superfood there is, I believe. They greatly reduce your risk of colon cancer. They give you Dr. Furman calls it the second meal effect. They make you very satisfied and satisfied for hours. They're grounding. I used to eat like a vegetable bean stew before I went to a meeting, any kind of meeting like with Walmart when I'd have to go to those meetings. And that would just ground me. It was amazing. And so that's the beans. Also, as I said, they greatly reduce your risk of colon cancer. They are very helpful for people with colitis, with a lot of the lower bowel issues, because they're very high in soluble fiber, which is very easy to digest. That's why all the different squashes are really good for people with irritable bowel or colon type issues, because it's also very high in soluble fiber, of course, unless you have a sensitivity to it, which, some people could, but it's not a real common sensitivity trigger. So what I do is I help people to transition to whole food plant-based eating, because being able to eat this way, the nutritarian way with all these nutrients, is vitally important, especially with someone with GI issues, because they usually are compromised in absorbing nutrients. So they need as many nutrients as they can possibly get in their body. And so I teach people how to make their foods, a nutrient enhancing technology helps the food become more bioavailable for people. I also help people to transition to eating beans, because one of the problems with legumes is that there's a specific type of bacteria, several specific types of bacteria that eat the resistant starch, the cellulose and the different compounds that are in the beans that our bodies do not digest. And so when people first start eating legumes, they don't have that bacteria yet, or maybe very little of it. So they have to go slowly with maybe like a spoonful a day and slowly increasing the legumes so then they will begin to cultivate that bacteria. So these are just some of the things that that I help people with. So there's certain vital protocols. One is the whole food, plant-based, nutritarian style diet is absolutely vital, and I explained the reasons for that. And then there's the temporary elimination of different trigger foods. And then you want to temporarily, when you're doing this elimination diet, you want to temporarily stop supplements except for the main ones like vitamin D, of course, which you need a good amount of that, especially during COVID. I'm out in the sun all the time, and I take vitamin D 10,000 IUs a day, because after age 50, you don't absorb as much vitamin D as you did when you're younger. Methyl B12, most of the people with gut issues need the methyl B12 because it's already been converted. Then kelp iodine, and vegan DHA and EPA, because that's anti-inflammatory. It helps reduce inflammation. And then the nutrient enhancing food technology, blending, certain types of blending, crushing, water sauteing, eating variety, and legume transition techniques. And then lifestyle habits, like the fresher the veggies, the better. With farmer's market, and eat some legumes with every meal. Starting with one, and you work up to 1.5 cups a day. That's what Dr. Greger recommends. So the reason I'm outside, I haven't really explained that yet, is as I said, I've been to many, many doctors, and I've done many treatments, which, yes, they have helped me, but they have not resolved my issues. And the last doctor that I spoke with was very interesting. He's in California, and I can't take many supplements or medications, and I don't want to take medications. And my pancreas is not producing enzymes. It's producing 0 enzymes. So I do have to take pancreatic enzymes. But one doctor said that he thinks that I have something called reflux dystrophy. And that is when you have an accident or something, and the nerves go haywire. And since my sacrum was crushed, that's kind of Grand Central Station for nerves. And so he suspects that I have some nerve damage. And so he said that the only way that he knows of that has worked for people is to just go and live in nature, and do a lot of exercising. And so I do a lot of rebounding on the rebounder outside, do a lot of hiking in the hills. I'm so blessed to live in the Ozarks, where we have all these trails up in the hills. So I do that every day, and I get outside around 6:30 to 7 in the morning, and I'm pretty much outside until around 8:30 at night. And when it gets cooler, I probably will start sleeping outside in a tent some. So it has helped. It has greatly helped. It greatly helped me, I will tell you that. So something is happening. This doctor explained how, the very interesting doctor explained how the cells, how the sun is so important. And I don't stay in the sun the whole time. I'm in the shade a lot. I get probably about 15 minutes on either side in the sun before noon. But in the early morning, I'm out lying watching the sun come up over the trees. And it's very beautiful, and I now do all my business meetings outside. I stay very calm when I'm outside. And so yes, it is helping. Whether it will completely heal me, I don't know, but I am functional. And so that is basically my story, and I help, and I do not charge a fee for my services. I do ask if people if they can donate. I have a website, which is robinjeet.com, www.robinjeet.com. That's ROBIN, and it's JEET, just like the car. It's my last name. And I also have a vegan, whole food, plant-based food manufacturing business with a partner. One of the people I worked with at Walmart left Walmart, and we went into partnership. And we did produce a line of whole food smoothies that were under the Suja label that were exclusively sold at Walmart. And now we're doing something called Manna Muffins, and we have a company called Enliven Foods. And so Manna Muffins are grain-free, amazing. They're amazing. They taste, you can do them in a mug muffin in the microwave, or you can bake them in the oven, and they taste like a gourmet. They're basically a gourmet dessert, but they're only sweetened with dates. And anyway, they're wonderful, and they should be coming out in October. We will be doing a test market where we will have online fulfillment at www.enlivenfoods.com. That's ENLIVEN foods.com. And now, after this, we will do questions and answers, and I can tell you more where I'm not cooking. And in a few minutes, I will plate the food and show you what everything looks like. Okay, so now we're ready to eat. We are ready to eat. So here we have, this is our lineup here. So let me start to do a plate. And we do eat ample amounts of food. And I've got some quinoa. I just made some quinoa to have some quinoa with this. Then we have some greens here. We want to get a little bit of everything. Then we get some of this rapancante squash. What I love about eating this way is you can eat a lot of food. I've always liked to eat a lot of food. Some yellow squash. Look at this variety. I mean, this is like the ideal. Okay, so now let's do this with this. And see, I did put the mushrooms on top. I kind of forgot the mushrooms. I often forget things when I do these, but I usually make up for it. I mean, I'm just giving you recipes, and then you can create your own things from these recipes, your own dishes. Things you like. Okay, so here's this sauce. So I'm going to put this sauce over these vegetables, over the quinoa, maybe some over the beans. I mean, I'm not plating this like in a fancy restaurant. I'm plating this like at home, eating this at home. If I were going to plate it like a fancy restaurant, I'd use a lot less, and I'd pile it up in the middle. And so I'm just going to put a little fresh parsley on top. So this is home cooking. Ozark home cooking. Not what you would expect to find in the Ozarks. No salt. If you want salt, I always recommend you use Celtic sea salt, and you just do it you don't cook with salt, and do it with the, when you eat, just the surface of your food. Then you don't get too much sodium. And you never want to cook beans with salt. You can make them tough. But here's your meal right here. Full meal. You've got the niçoise, tomato potato niçoise, the one skillet meal with the vegetables, the beans, the quinoa, and maybe if you wanted to have a little salad or some berries, you'd have all the G-bombs.
Is there enough protein in that dish?
I am guessing there's probably about 25 grams of protein, 30 grams of protein in this dish right here. That's a lot of protein. So, bon appetit, and I will see you up on the hill for questions and answers.